Good morning, everybody. This is P. Francis Mcnichol, otherwise known as Phil to my friends. I am driving towards the Lake Accotink Fairgrounds and Fairfax County Park, and I thought it interesting, and so everything to the right is, that direction is basically Ravensworth Farms. Over here to the left, there's a big wooden sign to Wakefield Park on the very north end of what you would call Accotink. The Fort Belvoir and military United States Army occupied all this land at one time, and this Wakefield Park is basically part of that was given and taken and going back and forth with the Army Corps of Engineers. This is a pretty big park with fields all over. Wakefield is still up that way, but this is the lower part of the parks. And I think right there is where the Lake Accotink Creek path starts, all the way this north of the lake. And so I used to walk that path as a kid, come up here and watch the Redskins play in the late 1970s, because our TV was not that good. And on my adventures, I'd carry a trash bag with me. I'm going back out here. I carry a trash bag with me because I collect returnable bottles. They were actual glass bottles for 10 cents a pop. Get 10 of them, or 2 6-packs, and you have $1.40, $1.20, whatever it worked out to. Now I'm going back westbound on Braddock Road. Everything now to my left is Ravensworth Farms. So I'm coming down here. And right there, well, let's go this direction while there's no traffic. Right here where this bridge is the Accotink Creek. And right next to the creek is the path. Here is the Glen Park Lowry Field. We'd walk up Braddock Road and come here to play baseball. This field right here is where my brother hit a home run from here all the way back there where we came in and broke a windshield on Braddock Road. All this stuff used to not be here. The townhomes. I played on that little league while my brother was older, and he played Babe Ruth League. There's some Don Johns there. That backfield there is where I played baseball also. And all the fields we practiced football on for Braddock Road Youth Club. There is the memorial for the Lowry Six. Rest in peace, guys. They died putting up these large electrical field lamps. And one of the wires hit the wet ground that they were all standing near. Really beautiful memorial. I did a video before when I was here, but they didn't have all the metal work. I think people might have talked about my video and how I've asked questions wanting to do, gotta back up safely here, wanting to do a movie about deaths at the lake. Because all this property I speak of was ran by the Army Corps of Engineers. And when they started giving land back to the local government, the engineers themselves, I don't know how they worked it out, but they would be privates and lower ranking people. They would be recruited to do projects like clearing all these woods. There used to be an old white house behind the woods there, right in the corner. And I wish I could get the name of the street more sooner. But it was a really creepy house. We didn't think it was haunted. People lived in it. And we played sports here. We'd always talk about it. All us kids from the different communities. Really beautiful memorial. Since the last video I did a couple years ago, I want to say just as COVID was ending, I want to say right around the time a lot of people, clients at our work started dying. I remember I had some free time and I came here and there was a bench seat. Those two bench seats, you can just make them out the gray. They were not there. There was a bench seat back up in that right corner, near that right corner where that one plastic, I want to say showcase is. But all these metal signs are for the 6 individuals, I'm assuming. I didn't read them yet. There's a deep dive I'm going to do more into each individual. Wow, how things change. Look at all those woods and everything grown up. Looking at Braddock Road. And my brother, we had in-ground dugouts. Not these open ones here. We had a big concession stand right here in the middle. Not just a Don John. Right there. And so this is basically the northwest side of Lake Accotink Park. And it's not considered Lake Accotink Park, I understand that. But what Fairfax considers county property parks, this is part of it. And all this, all the way this north of Lake Accotink, was all the same grounds. So we're going eastbound now. And to the right is the famous Ravensworth Farms. I made a fictitious Ravensworth Farms I wrote about in Below the Precipice. In the book, look at those old tennis courts. Got grass growing out of them. They haven't really kept them up. That parking lot, you used to be able to park right there and walk straight down to the path. And then all the way to the left, all the way parallel to Ravensworth Farms, is the creek, Lake Accotink Creek, and really historical and famous lake I was raised at. Below the Precipice was a fictitious place, but all the inspiration and all the mystery and all the fascination. We used to cut through that house right there to the back path, and that house right there. Used to have a good friend. I consider him a good friend now, even though I haven't spoken to him. We cut through his backyard to get to the path. And so this is on the outskirts of Ravensworth. I want to say the outer rib, so to speak. That house right there is redone. That house was not ever like that. That's not the style of houses. They're just old 1960s houses. Most of them ramblers, some of them split level in the mid 60s when they were changing it up. And on the other side of these houses is basically the path, the creek, going all the way down to the swamp at the big wide open area where the lake opens up. I'd like to say almost as far as you can see, but that's not true. The lake is pretty big. It's pretty formidable. But it's not the biggest lake. Wow, look at that. That's a new house. They redid all these. Those are not Ravensworth Farms houses. Here is one entrance to the lake. I used to ride my bike down this way and cut through. Look at that ominous path. That brown sign straight ahead. If you were to go down there, hang a right, you'd head back towards Braddock Road and Wakefield Park. If you hang a left, you'd hit Dead Man's Cliff and the lake. At Dead Man's Cliff, that's what we called the swamp. And then below the precipice, I give apt descriptions of similar inspiration from this area. And I was wondering if I couldn't go down to Dead Man's Cliff today. And I didn't want to park in front of these old houses and they say, oh, someone is doing something, when there's avid bike riders and, professional riders that do competitions. I didn't use actual street addresses in below the precipice and actual locations. Trust me, I'm not worried about being sued under a First Amendment right. But the reason I made it fictitious in terms of other names was I didn't want people, if it ever becomes a movie, which I hope it will, I believe there's a good chance now it will, when I'm done with Deaths at the Lake documentary, I didn't want people descending on private property. This is open to drive through. There's nothing illegal about driving around videotaping uh, you know, just for nostalgic reasons, where you used to live. I'm not doxing anybody. That church, I remember, wow, that church must be like 50 years old. When I was riding my bike down this way to get to the lake by other means than Inverchapel back there, this church, I knew I was way in the back of the development, and this is only one half of the development. This is one half, and I'd be at these back streets here, and I'd be like, man, I got a long way to go back to my house, you know, closer to the entrance where we just came from, by the pool. So much fun on our bikes. It was like exploring the world, yeah, but man, we had great adventures. My buddy Chris in grade school, he lived in one of these houses. I don't remember which one. It's not that important. But then you make a right here. What is this? This isn't outlet this far back. And then you'd have another entrance to the lake here. Now, when I was at the train trestle, there's the entrance. There's a big, I want to say sewer hole here behind this thicket in Purlew. And you could walk in it just like any old Stephen King movie. And I guess us kids have the same mystery going on in our souls, where we want to investigate the world around us. And we used to literally take M80s and blow them off in that big sewer culvert. And we go all the way to Braddock Road, back at the other side where we just came from. We're going more into the expansion of Ravensworth, and this house right here is where my best friend ever, TJ, lived. And they moved from here. We used to go to the side window at the bathroom, and he'd have cigarettes he'd confiscate or steal or acquiesce from his parents. But they moved to Michael Edwards is in one of these houses here. But TJ lived right there, and we'd come down off the hill. You just make out the hill in his backyard. And there's a side window to the bathroom there, and we'd ask for cigarettes. So cool. Yeah, here's Elliot. And we'd ride our bikes all the way down there, because Queensbury was the other edge. I want to say the northeast wedge or rib of Ravensworth Farms. We wouldn't ride our skateboards all the way down here and try to slow down in the middle of Queensbury. Traffic was definitely faster than on the other side of Inverchapel. See, there's Queensbury right there. But anyways, that culvert I speak of at the entrance to the park right there went all the way up about a mile that way to Braddock Road. Another entrance to Ravensworth. And no one else wanted to go all the way with me. And I went all the way up to Carrick and Bullock and Adair Lane and came all the way back down just to get out and go home, because it was like, okay, nothing's up there but a cold freaking sewer, you know, that was just about 4.5 feet high so people could stand up in it. But it's like right there. You can take that path there and go all the way to the lake too. So this is Queensbury, and there's not more side streets this way, but there's more side streets to the left. So just about everything that way is the lake. Sedgwick to my left. Okay, here it opens up some. It's getting further away from the lake, so some side roads do open up to original houses. You know, Ravenel Lane. And we're almost at the part where I'm not sure if it's considered just North Springfield or not, where you come in down by the park. And there's entrances. I know it's North Springfield, but I don't know if it's considered Ravensworth anymore. So we're basically closer to or parallel to or at the end where the train tracks are eventually going to be crossing and passing everything. I remember this stop sign. I believe the lake goes that way, the lake entrance. And this way is to downtown Springfield. Now I know for sure we're in North Springfield. It's considered the North Springfield neighborhoods. Lots of history here, lots of nostalgia. Very fascinating. Yeah. We're just going under 495 right there, guys. My other best friend, Brian Terry, moved over here. We didn't pass his house in Ravensworth. He moved over here, one of these houses. We'd ride our bikes all the way down here when we got a little older. Pretty interesting. But the history of the lake and the woods where the houses in the backyards abut to is fascinating, because they have foxholes all over the place, and there's two different reasons for the foxholes. The military making the foxholes doing bivouac, and the military doing foxholes as part of the fire control. I was researching, and there are these old holes with all kinds of weeds and plants growing out of it, and us kids would like play in them, you know, overlooking the creek and the lake. But that was the fire control was kind of an outdated concept. The Robinson plant, Washington Post plant, is right there. You can see from 495 forever for 50 years. This is the back way to it. I'm trying to remember how exactly to get to Backlick Road. I know it was on the north Springfield side. But anyways, it's beautiful to reminisce because these neighborhoods were the creme de la creme of the expanding federal bureaucracy post-World War II. And I want to say the average American, unless they had a very good paying job, even 50, 60 years ago, you had to do a lot of things to make ends meet. The federal workers or PACs or corporate leaders. Yep, just like I thought. Oh, I just passed another entrance to the lake. I remember this island here before Backlick Road. And here we are, Backlick Road. I live 2.5, 3 counties away from where I was raised in those neighborhoods. And that's all well and good. But the beauty of the lake is for all the children mostly, and the opportunity to go out and experience life and the world around them without all the rules and regulations, without everybody holding their hand. And how things have changed. Death at the lake is not to be macabre. It's to be mysterious and expose those mysteries that were never really explained to everybody growing up, never really examined, historically speaking. I mean, you would have a liberal believe that Ravensworth was a slave plantation of Robert E. Lee, and then it deserved to be burned down in 1927, I think it was, maybe 1929. Whenever it was, I heard and read a couple different dates. But right where the shopping center is, on the outskirts of that neighborhood I just passed, off of Braddock Road, right there at Braddock Road in Wakefield Park, there's very little, I want to say, markers explaining what the history of that mansion meant. Virginia got rid of slavery 20 years before the Civil War. And everybody thinks, oh, Robert E. Lee is just this evil man. He was, I want to say, smart enough to know slavery was bad in his soul. And he thought a totalitarian government dictating to the majority South was just as evil. No one is going to sit there and defend slavery. Let's call a spade, okay? But burying dead soldiers in front of the mansion just so he never returns to his home, it wasn't even his ancestral home. It was Mary Fitzhugh's ancestral home. And again, they rid of slavery. The Fitzhughs had all the money in the world at a certain point. They did not need slaves. And they could read the writing on the wall. So after the Ravensworth Farms mansion was burnt down, they let it sit there. They didn't want to renovate it. But my point is, as a child, the Ravensworth Farms shopping center, right there on the outskirts of Ravensworth Farms, where we were raised as children, was cleared out. And there's little to nothing saying about relocating these unknown grave sites and these unknown soldiers' names. Okay? And then, speaking to my sister, 20 plus years ago, she says, Phil, you can write, you have some skill. Why don't you write a ghost story like when we were children? And I've known all this history about Ravensworth Farm, researching it in the library as a kid and incorporating a lot of, I want to say, lore about the world around us, about people that deserve to be, I want to say, immortalized, at least for the historical content and context. And Below the Precipice was born. I took about a year to write Below the Precipice, learning how to type on my own, learning how to write, typing as I'm going, adding a few pieces, a few scenes while I was working a full-time plus overtime job. And when I sent Below the Precipice to, I want to say, San Antonio, Texas, where Sci-Fi, their, I want to say, technical department that do all the graphics that were there, I was trying to get a hold of someone, and out of a courtesy, I sent the manuscript of Below the Precipice to them because I wanted to do a real movie in a fictitious state like Below the Precipice, but make it realistic, make it dynamic. One character in a freaking crazy family, but he sees the history, he sees bad things that occurred better than even the adults. And I think every child has been in that position before, when they're hyper acute about the world around them. And it's not about telling a story because I have something to say. It's a fictitious story. Below the Precipice is. However, Deaths at the Lake will be that historical story. It will be that fascinating ensemble of history condensed in less than 2 hours. Then I do want to work on an actual scary movie, horror movie, Below the Precipice. Everybody, if you want to support me and spread the word, I will send Below the Precipice out to my best friends if they ask. And through private means, they give me their address, of course. That being said, the story is there. It's already written. Deaths at the Lake are going to be a historical perspective of Lake Accotink in true history. And Below the Precipice, if you want to say symbiotically, is incorporating some of those historical facts without trying to be offensive to people and property rights and whatever you want to say because of some kind of animosity, or you don't want your property values, whatever the complaint is. These two movies, one movie will help sponsor the second movie, the fictitious movie. But the history is so fascinating. You don't need to be a child to understand it or enjoy it. That's why I was so saddened when Author House sabotaged Below the Precipice in some ways. It's still a great read. It's still available. But I had to go back and forth with them literally 5 times to make sure the master was correct and what they corrected was documented. And then all these years later, I buy a couple books to give to friends, and there's still typos in it that they put in there on purpose. The story about Below the Precipice needs to be told itself by just doing a movie and it actually succeeding. But Deaths at the Lake, oh my God, Deaths at the lake. I have so many great ideas that researching and enjoying other channels on YouTube I've taken note of, but the graphics are going to be phenomenal. Lake Accotink is so beautiful and it's worth preserving, literally for another 200 years. So children 200 years from now would be saying, wow, let me research some of that history of where I was born and raised. Excuse me. And, oh, look, P. Francis Mcnichol did a lot of videos about the history. Let me deep dive some more into the archival footage and newspapers of old. And they too would have a parkland that they can cherish and love and feel like their soul is there. You know, Below the Precipice has been milked for all it can be for other people's money. I haven't got 1 cent, and they keep on asking me to fill out this real technical form. Author House has. And I know people have bought Below the Precipice by Jonathan Allen. That was my pen name back in 2007. And I know they got their money's worth. I know Sci-Fi Channel did their segues with some of the descriptive narratives in Below the Precipice. I know it because they're so identical and they're rare. Okay, and I mean rare as it, you just don't pop this out of your head, these descriptions. And so they made segues in between their commercials and programming. And people have seen money on my account, but I have not seen anything in my account. And I'm the one that did the art. They deserve better. But Lake Accotink deserves to be preserved for the next 200 years, so all of us can enjoy it and the history involved with it. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Please have a blessed weekend and a safe week to come. God bless you and everyone, to include all family. God bless you. Take care.